So I'm Toby Peach and I'm a theatre maker from the UK, and I'm here today because, well, it was yesterday I was talking and presenting a theatre show that I made about my experience of having Hodgkin's lymphoma when I was 20 and then again when I was 22. And I made this show because I was interested in the fact I didn't understand what cancer was, and I wanted to understand what it was, and the more and more I looked into it, the more and more I realised that this world that I'd kind of experienced was so foreign to me in a way, and I felt that I needed to know what it was about, and importantly is about how I was fortunate enough to come through it. And so I made a theatre show which was trying to talk about hope, and I think that's one of the hardest words to talk about in the world of cancer. In all honesty, it was it was complete shock, and the fact that my reaction was, is that the thing where I lose my hair, kind of showcases the fact that, I was worried about something which is so mundane. Your appearance when you're facing something like cancer is really not that important, but it's something that obviously that's the kind of the reaction. And I'd made the mistake of going to the hospital on my own, and I'd driven myself as well, which was stupid really, because I just wasn't able to cope. So I had this moment of shock, and then I was in floods of tears, and then I had to call my mum to tell her that it was cancer, but it was going to be okay because it was Hodgkin's, and Hodgkin's is the most curable of the blood cancers, and she always reminds me that I would tell her there's good news and bad news. Bad news is that it's cancer, the good news is it's caught early and it's the best one you can get, they keep telling me, which is a strange thing to tell people. And she had to come, and she had to get a neighbour to drive her over so that she could come and drive my car back. So yeah, it was a bizarre moment, and it's one of those things where I look back on it now, and there was a nurse who was present, and I speak to her, and have done quite a bit since, and I know that is something that is it changes your world entirely, and it can never go back to what it was, and that's you have to accept. So I fell into a strange gap, I think, which was that I was just hitting 20, and I was at university, and I'm at that age where I'm starting to be independent, and I'm starting to be able to stand on my own 2 feet, and I think when I was diagnosed, I still desperately wanted to keep that. My family were incredible, and were kind of the support network around me, and my partner as well. And I think, but what happened was that actually I had the option I was kind of in this gap between the youngsters and the adults, and I didn't really want to be a teenager because I was older than that, and I also didn't want to be. I wanted to be seen as an adult, but I don't think it was right for me. Like, I probably could have got more from the fact that, so in the UK we have Teenage Cancer Trust, and they have units in hospitals, and I could have gone to one of those units and been around, had a bit more relaxed kind of atmosphere, I'm sure, but I didn't push for that because actually in my mindset I just wanted to get it done, and I think the less interaction I could have with other people, the better. It was this thing of going, well, actually I was going to the hospital once every fortnight for the first time of having cancer, and I would go and have my appointment in the afternoon. I would drive back from my university, have my appointment, get the chemo in the morning, rest up Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday, and drive back Sunday to my university and go back to school and be at uni Monday, for another 2 weeks. So for me, the thing was going, I want as little impact on my life. I don't want cancer to be this thing that is taking away my education, as well as my friends, my partner. And I think, yeah, I was so fortunate that people around me allowed me to do that. I was at drama school, and acting school, and my teachers were brilliant and allowed me to have that Friday off, and look after myself. And obviously I had PIC lines in and other kind of tubes and stuff, but they were brilliant because they knew that that was what I needed. And the second time, when I relapsed, I had to be an inpatient, but because it's this strange thing of being I was inpatient, but I was in like confinement for 6 days, and that was repeated how many times? I can't remember how many cycles you have of that, but because I was in confinement, again, I didn't want to see anybody else. Like, friends would come in and things like that. So, but maybe that's just because the option wasn't there for me and I wasn't able to have that interaction. But again, it was trying my best to have as little impact on my life. And I think because I had in my mindset, because it was Hodgkin's, and because of the fact that this treatment, they were very positive that they caught it early the second time, I just wanted to get it done, and I wanted to not, and I didn't want to talk about it. Kind of wanted everyone to kind of just ask me about the hospital food, ask me about that, that's fine. I found for a long time I didn't want to have that conversation. I didn't want to talk about it because I was afraid of what people would think of me, and also I didn't want people to feel sympathy. I didn't want them to feel bad, and so for a long time I kind of would say, yeah, it was okay, it was fine, let's just move on, let's not talk about anything but cancer. And I think that's also the way that society kind of views cancer, is because we're very scared about it and very scared about what it can do, because we're afraid to talk about death, we're afraid to talk about disease, and I guess healthcare comes into that as well. So I just think it's about having conversations, allowing people to know what people can experience and how they can face it. I guess for me, one of the biggest takeaways is the fact that I'm mortal, and I think embracing the times when I have a bad day, or somebody's maybe somebody else is having a bad day, and trying to embrace the kind of feeling of going, yeah, I know that this moment can be bad, and actually to us, but time passes, and that when it's like it's so often it's not a full stop in our lives, and I feel very fortunate enough that I've come through my treatment and I'm able to be outside. That's what a big thing for me is. I remember the confinement was a big, and not confinement, but also when not just being locked in a room, but when you actually can't leave somewhere, maybe because you've got a tube in or you're tired. And for me, that's one of the big things is about being grateful for that, being grateful for being able to leave my room, being able to walk down the corridor without getting out of breath. And I'm a runner, and so there's this thing about being grateful for that, of being able to do things that are perhaps not, I do like to go and do traveling and things like that, but sometimes it's just about the small things, and knowing that I can walk out like I did this morning. I can come to America and be here for a couple of weeks, and yeah, I think that's the thing for me is looking at those moments that I perhaps might have taken for granted. I think it's the acknowledgement that it's okay to not be okay, and that's really important to acknowledge, because I think that there is a kind of an expectation that we just carry on, and that we just keep going when we face a trauma, and that there's some shame in looking at that experience and understanding it and taking it on in a way, because for me there were times when I wasn't okay, but I blocked that out, and I tried to pretend that I was okay, and I'd say I'm fine, I'm okay, I'm fine. And for me that was me just protecting myself and protecting others, And actually what I needed to acknowledge, and I definitely think there's a bit of a kind of a masculinity kind of thing in there of being, I'm a man, I don't need to talk about my feelings, but which was just to acknowledge that I wasn't okay, and I was finding it hard to cope with the emotional side to having treatment. And I think as well we can sometimes leave the post-treatment and say you've gone through the hardest part, which is having the chemotherapy or whatever treatment you've had. But for me, post-treatment was harder. It was harder for me to understand, because I wasn't able to contemplate the things that were left, the side effects of the treatment. And I think if we can acknowledge that side of it as well. We can acknowledge that their mental side of their health, as much as their physical, is so important, and that there are times when you'll feel bad. There are times when you won't feel great, and that's okay. And it's to try and focus on those moments, it's not the full stop as well. Like there are times when it will change. As much as you were before, that there's the chance that things will change, and believing in that chance of change is really important. I think I'm interested in ways that we can make the patients of today and of the future more comfortable, and I think that's about looking at ways that we're treating patients and how to get better treatments, but also about post-treatment and making sure that we're able to cope with the mental health side of a cancer diagnosis, and finding ways that we can make that. And I say the patients of today and of the future, because what I'm kind of striving for is about looking at it is about the person who perhaps hasn't got a connection to cancer at the moment, but when they're 70, that they might have an experience themselves, or a partner, or a sister, or anything. And I think it's trying to look at if I can do something that means that experience is easier for somebody going through it, even if it's 70 years down the line. I mean, how amazing would it be if somebody who is able to say, I'm going to be able to talk to somebody who is going through cancer because of something I remember from a performance or a theatre piece or some kind of story that made me understand what somebody might go through, and maybe understand what questions might be arising for that person, so that they can cope better with and beyond cancer. It's been the privilege, really, and I really acknowledge that as a privilege, to be able to reflect. So my job as a theatre maker and a storyteller has been about looking at how I help others tell stories. I work quite a lot with young people and giving them the tools to be able to understand what it means to be a young human, and able to share that with people, because I think that's what theatre is about looking at what it means to be human. And for me, I think that has given me the opportunity to be able to understand what it meant to be a young human who'd experienced cancer, and be able to put that into kind of a language and into a story that would be accessible to audiences, and to go, yeah, I can sit through this young man talking to me about cancer for 50 minutes, because I'm not sitting there and I'm not sitting there being bored. I'm engaged in a story and something that allows you to kind of dive into that world. I think I'm very privileged that I was studying community theatre at drama school when I was diagnosed, and I think a lot of my work since then has been about looking for what is my community, what community I want to support with my work or make accessible with my work. And I realised that the young adult cancer community was a group that I felt a connection with and I was passionate about working for. And it meant that I was able to go, wow, this is something that I can offer. So I'm on Twitter on @TobyPeach, and then I have a website which is tobypeach.co.uk. It's co.uk, not .com. Remember, I am British. And yes, you can find all the information about the work that I do there and the shows that I've done and the stories that I've told.